But the way we normally start is by asking how you got into filmmaking, or did film hit you like really early on, or did you kind of find it later in life?
I mean, my first vivid memories, I was born in Chile in the 80s in a dictatorship. So I had, unlike you, probably black and white television. And in 1985, I was 2 years old. I was born in 83 and I remember everything. So I saw my parents, they were like a young couple by then. They were watching like the big event of the night of the year, probably. It was Sunday at 9 p.m. Empire Strikes Back, and dubbed to Spanish. So I was 2 years old. I can relate because I have kids and babies. And I escaped for some reason in the middle of the night. I decided to just see my folks, right? And I was walking in this hallway, and I saw this like the first TV on call that we had, having the scene when C3PO is outside the gate, and that kind of like changed my perception of life right there. And I was like enamored by it, and I was like super young. I was 2 years old, and I remember this vividly. So after that, I found this loophole, that every night I can go there and watch a little bit of movies that my folks were watching, right? So I grew up with, I don't know, like Superman, with Indiana Jones, all this like American culture that was coming like very late for us. I'm telling you, 85, and Empire Strikes Back is from 1980, I believe. So just arriving to Chile, super, it was like funky times in Chile in those years. So I felt like this is something, it's like a window to something that I feel really connected to. And then as I was growing up, I was consuming all the NGM films of the 50s. They were showcased every day in the afternoon from 5 p.m. and on. So I grew up with all that things, super old stuff, and that created like a way for me to communicate. My references will be these films, my play dates with my friends in the blog, or my brother would be to just reenact movies from the 50s, stuff like that. So it became part of my language, not really knowing how to use it in a creative way, right? But 10 years later, from that 85 moment, and I'm very, probably you noticed by now, I'm very peculiar with dates and precise about it, a little OCD about it. In 1995, it was like a big family milestone, the 50-year anniversary of my grandpa's, and I was given a camera and a task. Someone gave me a Sony Hi8 with a black and white viewfinder. I said, okay, I don't want to film this, you film it, figure it out. So that moment that the eye goes into the viewfinder, it completely transformed me. That was it for me. That was okay. I'm seeing the world a different way. I love this stuff, and I don't want to stop. So he was kind of my rich cousin. Everyone has a rich cousin, right?
Right.
So he had like the underwater housing. He was into diving and things like that. So he was like super prepared by those years and times, right? But I didn't have access to a camera, so it took me like probably 2 more years to get access to a camera from a local guy that would do weddings. And I convinced all my classmates to pay some money to this guy so he can show up to my house and we can do a short film.
Right.
And that was like 96, a year later, again with my OCDness about dates. And from them, I just really didn't pay attention to the equivalent of high school. I enjoy my time creating films. And I decided very early on, probably was 14, that I would love to just spend my life in Swiss, not knowing where to start. Like I said, I wasn't born in America. It was like a very funky times in Chile, but the 90s were much better. The 90s were like, every time I tell people that I grew up, like, your 90s here is hard to believe, but we were so influenced by American culture that I kind of felt the same on my friends from the same age in this country, right? So I became serious there, and then I decided, okay, this is my life, and I need to do whatever I can to just be around a camera all the time. So that gives you
Yeah,
like a little bit of the medium answer.
for sure. Well, it's actually kind of great to hear that you well, I suppose being born in the 80s is easier, but I'm actually writing an article right now about like how to learn, because I
Mhm.
think right now online it's so easy to find what I call beginners teaching beginners, and they don't have
Mhm.
that history of watching older films, and even older films that weren't
Absolutely.
necessarily good, but you still learn like how things were done, because film's a young medium. It's only 100 some odd years old. So it's relatively easy to learn how things started, and how they are done now, and all the little changes that were done, either necessarily or unnecessarily throughout. So it's always good to hear that like someone around my age is also like, started in the 50s. You're like, all right, that is good.
No, it was like probably motivated by the temperature of the country, right? The economy of those years. You will consume cheap American art form because you couldn't really purchase the rights for something that was an ABC at the same time. It was impossible, and the technology wasn't there, so you couldn't have you couldn't use like servers, stuff like that, right? So you will wait until things are even for the movies and cinemas. We'll wait a year to see a movie that was like a blockbuster of the year, right? We had to wait. So we were like forced to learn from old stuff. That I think it gave me a good appreciation of the span of 5 years to go through all these eras. So I mean, I look back now, and like I mentioned, I'm a father, so I can see how my kids are being raised now and experiencing the world, and I just get so much nostalgia from our era, especially from where I come from. But that's for another podcast. Yeah.
What we were just talking about this, I think on the last two podcasts about getting, I think so many DPs got together with their friends and tried making little movies. Was there a film that you remember attempting to recreate? We were just talking about it being the Matrix for us. On the last podcast.
No, you did a fun part. I was like doing a movie that came in 1982, I believe, that was like celebrating the 500 years of the discovering of America as a continent. It was Christopher Columbus movie, something like that. So I saw my opportunity. I was thinking as a producer, what could be hot for that time, right? So I anticipated that in my grade, we'll reach in October, which actually this type of time, right, Columbus Day, and I could actually get an audience if I do something with Columbus Day. So I watched this film, and I recreated with like 3 or 4 guys. This a couple of scenes there, and we have only one female classmate that we signed up for the task, and she didn't show up, so I had to be a queen. So I had to like be behind the camera with this guy that we hire, and I went to my mom's closet and got like an absolutely awful old fur that was covering me, and I played the queen, and I had to go back. So with these guys, we came up with that movie that was intended to be like a little knockoff, poorly made, with a super VHS tape that I purchased in Blockbuster that afternoon, actually, for like I don't know, the equivalent of $2 from money nowadays. And that was kind of the film that we tried to recreate it. So it wasn't a fun one. The Matrix is amazing, or Star Wars or something like that. It was like a boring film that I just saw the business opportunity of putting it together.
Sure.
That's all. Because it was like.
Well, I was going to say, did you always come to filmmaking holistically then? Because obviously with the documentary we're going to talk about, like you wore a lot of hats.
Yeah.
Were you always kind of a one-man band type person, or was there one section of the art form that kind of draws you more?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much I see myself more like it's like a hybrid role sometimes, when I do agency work or commission-based work or even narrative pieces, I tend to be more organized in terms of like each areas, and I come from fiction, so my first film was not a documentary, it was a feature film for fiction, right? In fiction. So I come from that model, and I do like small teams, for a lot of reasons. I feel comfortable wearing many hats and like to be involved in the visuals, So when you grow up and you start working with more teams, you get the luxury sometimes of coming up with partnerships, right? With a DP that you really like to work with, or a production designer, or an editor. But in my case, I think out of necessity, I've been doing this for a long time because I haven't found those pieces yet to me. I have collaborated with many guys. When I hire people and that goes and shoot with me everywhere in the world when we're shooting, but I haven't felt that I found this person that I will really interpret what I have in my brain, for some reason. And I think it's just, I'm sure it's meant to happen the other way. I'm sure that at some point, maybe tomorrow in the next shoot, I will just come across a person. But for now, I just being that way, and I found that in fiction was probably more challenging, but then that necessity in documentaries became a skill set,
Right.
because I can be more ninja, I can be more careful around what's going on around me, right? And I can just be more efficient from a technical point of view, a budget point of view. I can probably save a lot of money if I do it that way, and spend more on the specific areas that are going to provide a higher production value, such as post production, right? An amazing composer for a orchestral score, right? And I feel capable, of course. You understand filmmaking, and you are in the field, of course. So it's like a second guessing, constant state of mind, right? So you're always thinking, am I doing right or not? And of course, when you have team members, that alleviates that, because you are with your gang, with your tribe. So you feel like, okay, I will take care of this, and you will take care of this, and we're all happy. But sometimes in scenes in this documentary, especially the one that we'll talk probably later, which is the Dambusters, I was like really forced to just tackle many jobs as I could because I was limited, So okay, but this is a part of me that is being driven that way out of necessity, like I said a couple of times, and it's part of my formation too. I studied film for a couple of years in Argentina, and Argentina is a very like author-like world. So I didn't go to like a media program, right? I didn't go to like a university. I went to a school of directors, by the equivalent Almodovar in Argentina, Eliseo Subiela, which made great movies. So we were like a bunch of guys. We all wanted to be directors. We realized that it would be tricky sometimes. So we had to like disperse ourselves and try to find different jobs. And you start learning by mistake, So I sucked at many of those jobs, but then you learn how by errors, try and error. You learn that, okay, this is possible. And then just the practice. Then you are in the field, you have room for error. Sometimes you can even pull your phone and call someone to give you an advice. So you're on your own and you end up learning, So it becomes a good opportunity. But ideally, I always say that filmmaking is a teamwork. And even though I like small teams, I prefer to work with teams. Now it's like much better. It's richer that way now.
Yeah, and it's just obviously slightly lower stress.
Oh,
I
please,
think
no
it
idea.
can, yeah, I feel like it can seem more stressful to someone who hasn't done it. That there's like, oh, there's 200 people. It's like, yeah, but that's 200 people that are doing something that you don't have to think about, as long as you know what they're doing.
Yeah, what I did suffer though, just to give you a precise example, I was okay with camera stuff, whatever, except for with data stuff, the IT stuff. That puts me like on my nerves. That I think, because I know I could do something wrong. Sleep deprivation. You're tired. It's usually on the day. You're thinking about next day. You are copying things in the background, and that terrifies me. And I didn't. I was lucky that I didn't do any stupid thing, right? But I was in a constant state of constant, how you say this, feeling of stress because of this. And as opposed to be stressed during the shoot, I was happy places, doing all this stuff, having cameras and toys around me. We're happy with this stuff, right? But when it comes to that thing, it's like probably if anyone is listening this, that is working like me, doing a lot of stuff, my only advice would be never do the IT. Get someone, train someone, or whatever. But the IT is the worst nightmare.
Yeah, getting a good second AC or data wrangler or both. Having any assistant camera is pretty good. What actually something that speaking about doing things kind of in a small team or even by yourself, is there anything that comes to mind that you can think of that has helped you kind of raise the production value of your films or documentaries that you can think of that like maybe people could learn from?
Yeah, so two things in that comment. So I started paying more attention in the optical quality of the lenses that I'm using or choosing to use. Because sometimes in documentary, you are thinking about, I got to be fast, I got to be economical, right? So I don't want to swap lenses. I don't want to put filters on. I just want a Canon photo zoom that will do the job and it doesn't breathe and perfect. And it will take all sorts of weather. If it's drizzling water, it will be fine. So of course we all work in that regard sometimes, right? But I really see a distinction when I stop embracing that mentality and I went for like, okay, it's gonna be heavy lenses. I'm gonna have to be so careful when I swap them, and I will leave a little bit the comfort of a do-it-all zoom. So I started getting like more primes, and I will send like a shout out to my buddy Ryan Avery from Tokina.
I've talked to Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan is awesome. He provided a bunch of lenses for me to play with and entire sets of the Vistas, which are not the first choice. What are you having there?
Got
we need to talk about it. We need to talk about it because I shot so much of the Dambusters scenes with the 5135 a lot. Yep. I love that lens. I love the lens. Yeah, that lens is amazing. It's such a beautiful glass that it will never disappoint. And I. So that's one thing, to really choose your optical lens and quality of glass. Actually, that's better said. Quality of glass very carefully and use better glass, because I think sometimes you can have a C angle camera, a D angle camera capturing like a shot that you will use for 2 seconds, but when you're in post production, you have to like match up cameras and get the looks. And even if you're standardizing on ASICs on DaVinci, you will still benefit a lot if you keep certain consistency with good glass, right? So the audience won't really know what's going on, but they will see something weird that doesn't add up, right? When we were used to see GoPros, in crash cams, and now the Komodos or different cameras are kind of fulfilling that, right? So it's kind of the same thing, So that's one thing. Probably get like good glass. Don't cheap out in glasses, be creative and just do whatever campaign to get you good glasses and beg for glasses, but get good lenses, And the second one, it is the post-production. Post-production has to be done right in terms of this holistic way, which is the trifecta, which is the sound design and all what goes into it. I'm not mixing up the score. I think score is its own category. Although it gets mixed technically by a sound mixer guy, it's a different thing because it comes beforehand, right? And then the final grading or the color or syncing whatever you have in your mind to accomplish that vision, right? So those two main areas are the big differentiator for a professional shoot, and to really probably step up your visuals, So nowadays we have the luxury that we can learn a lot about post-production. DaVinci is an amazing software that can do everything you want, from ingesting on set till a DCP. Everything in between can be done there and beautifully and with all the standards you might need. We'll leave sound aside. Sound still Pro Tools the king, and it should be Pro Tools because it's amazing. But for image, is DaVinci, right? So I think, but I recommend to get the right people, and for that one, I do a lot of stuff on set, but when it comes to post-production, I step back, and I have one specific studio for everything. That's the way it should be. And they can understand things I never thought of, that will never, and when you deal with these guys, how little you know, because kind of the nature of every craft, right? So yeah, to sum it up for you, to give you like a recap, it's just get good lenses and get good post-production on these 3 areas, and you will be good to go.
Yeah. Well, and to your point about the having different, A, B, C, D cam, having lenses that match is going to make your life so much easier matching them in the grade. Because if you have 4 different models of camera, Canon, Sony, Panasonic, Blackmagic, whatever, they will all match so much better if you just have the same lens or same lenses from the same line on all of them, because people will notice an optical difference before Well, I shouldn't say people will notice an optical difference before they notice color, but it's easier to match color than it is. Oh, you can't grade in bokeh or like the fall off or anything like that, or
Exactly.
contrast.
Exactly. No, and yes, to give you a super precise example about this stuff, I was assigned to shoot a very small scene in France, like right before the pandemic. It was February, I believe, 2020, for the same film, right? And I was coming from an accident. I was in the Andes filming. I fell. I broke a knee. Long story short. So it was such a. This is the beauty in a way that could be bad for you, but the beauty of documentary that you can't really stage stuff. You have to like be present. So I didn't have the moment to say, okay, we'll reshoot it later. We'll just stage it later. No, I had to be there when they're draining a dam. There's no way to think about it, right? So I went there wearing a cane, with like a knee pad, the whole thing. The airlines were taking care of me from point A to point B. It was pathetic, but I went there anyways, and I decided to take my crappiest camera for this. My smallest camera, which is like a Sony A7R2. In those years, which is like still camera maybe. But I decided to take my Meta lens adapter and PL Sony Cinealta lenses.
Nice.
So keep it nimble, but and just forget about it and have a camera that will be super light with minimal rigging, so I can just work with my cane, and just be happy about it. So yeah, I went there with very low expectations. I just wanted to get it done, and I did get it done. And then I come back, and 2 years later, when we are deep into the weeds of post-production and working with the colorist, the guy sends me like the first preview of the whole thing, which is 70-minute long film, and I have specifically a few scenes of this thing. And my first reaction was, man, you did magic with these things. You cannot spot any difference. I used the same lenses that I used later on in some interviews so I can match it, and it was fine. No problem at all. So that's why even the sensor is a limited sensor in the way that it will process the signal, because it will be still 8-bit image,
right.
With S-Log2, 400 or 420 maybe.
420.
Yeah, 420. So yeah, even that is like not what you need for that DCP quality, 4K, deliverable for platforms, Ultra C. You will be like suffering. So I was like cringing about it, but then the guy worked it out perfectly and did some ACES standardization with everything. And, you can spot the difference, So that was a good choice of lenses. I didn't really hesitate on like using kit lenses, and keep native mount. I just said, okay, very small camera, very little camera, but let's try to beef it up a little bit more in the lenses, so I can get this compromise still nimble, something I can just do on my own or whatever, because I was very limited physically, and I wasn't at my best, but it had to be done. So yeah, so that kind of really reinforced my point that the lenses are so important, and it will make your life easier. Like you just said, you can match stuff better,
Yeah, I mean, I shot on the C100 Mark II for 6 years, and I did a lot of work in the camera, and then I learned a lot of like neat color tricks because the same thing, 8-bit 420.
Right.
But as long as you nail it, as long as you nail your exposure and your white balance is solid, like,
you're fine.
It still looks fine. It's when you got to fix things that things don't quite go your way.
No, I was like so grateful, almost crying with the colorist, saying, "Man, you did an amazing job. You're the best." And he said to me, "Man, it was well exposed."
Yeah,
That's it.
Right. Yeah.
That's it. It was fine. So we just got a good laugh about it. But long story short, yes, lenses are extremely important, actually.
We had a lens month on this podcast last year, which was Ryan Avery, Matthew Duclos.
Look at that! I gotta listen to it. Oh, Jay! Wow, he wrote the Bible.
I was gonna say that was gonna be my lead up. Did you pick up the Cine Lens manual?
Oh yeah, it's right there. It's like 20 pounds of worth of knowledge right there.
It's bigger than I got the BSC, the British Society of Cinematographers. They came out with a book called Preserving the Vision, which is just like all the BSC cinematographers across the years. And it's like a beautiful book, gilded, lovely. And I bought it just because why not? And it is smaller than the Cine Lens manual.
No, it's insane. It's insane. It's the
100 years of
biggest boost I
DPs.
ever had. No, it's. I mean, he did a great job. I mean, the book is beautiful. It's so much in there that yeah. Thank you, Jay, for putting a good job about it. And someday you will sign up for me when I see you, but I'm on a different coast, so it's tricky.
Yeah, I mean, he's been touring that thing a lot.
Yeah, but I haven't been able to like really catch him around me. When I go there, I'm working. He's not there, but I snuck up an emails to him, like thanking him, and yeah, he's phenomenal. So we all love the book. Is crazy.
It truly is. I've been telling people like, yeah, you need to pick up the ASC manual, but the the CineLens manual is definitely like you need them both.
Yeah, but the new edition, I had the old edition, but when I get the new edition from the ASC manual, which is like I think it's like I think it's 3,000 copies or something like that. So yeah, I wanna get that one.
I have a little bone to pick with the ASC, and that is the ads, because I have the green one. Because I live in LA, so these things are a lot easier to get. But I got the green, the 11th edition, and it's not like that marbled. In the ads, it looks like cool, like green marble. It's not that. It's just green.
Oh, so what? So maybe okay.
It looks like the 9th edition. I'm very upset.
So I think they're like misleading clients with an old version, or maybe like a Photoshop.
It was
version
a mock-up,
yeah, probably like a 3D render of it will look like this way, right?
Yeah.
But when it's printed and it's like a whole different thing. Interesting, yeah. I really want to get it because it's we are geeks about stuff like that, and we purchase whatever they produce.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Actually, that's a great question because I again super geek. Like I've got nearly every issue of Cinefx before they went under. Hundreds of ASC magazines, all these things. What are some of those resources that you have held on to over the years, or collected, or maybe enjoy?
American Cinematographer is something that when I was in film school, it was like, you really have American Cinematographer? How? And I'm telling you, 2002, 2003. So it was like a rare item that probably one or two rich students, will have. So everyone will be reading it. So I've been reading that for many years. And of course, I have my own subscription, so I keep reading them somewhere there. And I like a lot what John does in Film and Digital Times, which is like something that you can buy on PDF or get it too. So I like his take on things a lot too. His articles, he seems to have a good network, so he always interviews like people like feel like his friends, that are working on the industry, and sometimes a new camera system. Those are the things I read the most. I used to be very focused on Movie Maker, back in the day, but I haven't really followed up with them that much lately. I used to have the magazine. I know that they are more like blog now and more digital, like everyone, which makes sense. But I think American Cinematographer is kind of like top one, And I remember like 2 editions ago, probably in August or July, I was reading. Have you seen this show from Netflix? Keep Breathing. That is, it's about this airplane that fell in Canada, and this woman is trying to survive in this video of cinematography. So okay, so the show is good, and the DP did an amazing job with Impossible. I mean, really amazing. It was an article about little tricks that he was using there. So you learn from like a blur, which is like literally half of a page, and there's one picture there, and you learn so much just reading these guys that are working. And I'm always interested about outdoor filmmaking. It's kind of my thing now, and the fiction projects that I'm developing are in that same node. Let's be in the nature, let's be around. I feel really comfortable there, but of course, as you understand this very well, super challenging. So when you pick up a magazine like American Cinematographer and you read stuff like that, I mean, that is like a joy of knowledge right there. Not by a guy pretending to teach you. It's a guy that did it, and he's sharing all this stuff for you. So you can just not copy and paste, of course, because every job is different, but you can at least refer to something. So that's the beauty of these magazines, that they interview like real guys, doing an amazing job in so many tough conditions. And that's where I get my sources of learning, and I learn a lot just reading the magazine. So
yeah,
it's such a justified purchase that I put on my taxes as research. So I will give everyone
100%.
a little hint. That's
Bro.
research. So if iOS comes to me, I will give a fuck. So, okay, there you go. This is how we learn. That's it.
Yeah, I do the same thing with Blu-rays.
Oh yeah, no,
you can write Blu-rays off on your taxes. That's research too.
I do streaming actually, which is kind of the equivalent nowadays, right? The streaming and so a little PSA for all our freelancers out there. And books, stuff like that is your research because you're learning how to be better at your craft. Yep. So nothing, no one can, and my accountant told me, so I'm not like giving you just me, right? My accountant told me, and let's just go. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. Cause the thing I did, especially now having done this podcast for like 2 years, and I started interviewing like DPs that I really like looked up to and shit. I went on eBay, and people will sell, 50 back issues of American Cinematographer that they're just trying to offload for like $50. It's like $1. I bought, good idea. I got like 150 probably for maybe $100,
And it's such a great collector's item anyways. And I'm a collector. I have like a lot of toys. No, I have a lot of toys there and things like that. So yeah, that's kind of like, the wife complains, but I'm a little hoarder of American Cinematographer. So I'm gonna take your lead and probably go on eBay after the call, see what I can get.
Yeah, it's let's see I've asked this about a lot of people, but actually it's going to be 2 questions, depending on how the first one goes. But were you a big DVD or Blu-ray like special features person, or did that kind of not hit you very hard?
No, I was. I think that was probably right in this like gap time, pretty much when the internet became more stable, but not what it is right now. The DVDs were another source of a lot of knowledge, right? Especially when they have these commentaries that you can like turn on and see what the DP and the director are talking, or the producer, which is always amusing the way that they tell you things from the production point of view. But it was very heavy on those. I like a lot, for instance, when there were new editions from an old movie. For instance, the Forrest Gump special feature was amazing, and it was a movie from 1994. The Indiana Jones first set, the first trilogy, now with the 4th movie, right? The same thing, Back to the Future was another joy. And all those like thrillers, from the late 90s, like a couple of names coming to my brain now, like The Client, The Firm, all these John Grisham books, and they have like amazing, this director, Curtis Hanson, so you can, so I remember that there was a place in LA, I believe. I think it was called Planet DVD or something like that. You remember that? 2000,
something like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, early 2000, I'm sorry, because I have a classmate in film school, and I have the rich guys, that will come. He will go to the US, like, I don't know, every season or so. So he will go to a spot in LA. I believe it was Planet DVD, hopefully someone can put something in the comments, and he will like get all these like Kevin Smith movies, so like Dogma, and Jay and Silent Bob.
By the way, you can't get Dogma anywhere.
I mean,
that dude who went to prison, whose name shall not be mentioned, is like holding it hostage. You can get all of Kevin Smith movies on like DVD, Blu-ray, whatever, except Dogma.
Oh my God, that, and
luckily I have it, but from the early 2000s.
Oh my God, there's a movie on Netflix from Chile. I can't remember the name, but my classmate did, Gaspar Antilo, and I will probably send this to him. He was a huge fan of Kevin Smith, so I have the DVD because I bought it from this guy, right? And he begged me to give the Dogma DVD to him, so he has it. So another guy that's making movies you can watch on Netflix, heavily influenced by those DVDs and all what you can learn from these guys when they're commenting stuff. So yeah, I was super, super nerdy about it, and I took every little bit of information I could get,
So the reason I ask is I don't know how I'm going to make this happen, but first of all, I think that like Netflix, whoever, Amazon, all these people just need to put the director's commentaries in the language selector.
Yeah.
right? Like there's actually a, hold on one second.
Let's do a petition. Let's go on change.org or something and do a petition so we can just get them done.
Yeah. I feel like that'd be easy, but also I want to start a special feature streamer. That's just because like in my head, it's like the rights to special features can't be very expensive. Like I'm sure that,
I mean, they were always filmed.
They don't even get YouTube takedowns.
No one's seen them, and they were filmed by smaller crews. You know, with of course, in that era they were like, I don't know, like Sony DV cams or something like that.
Right.
So yeah, so they look different. You know, all the interviews with I'm sure you remember this, the Lowell Todas.
Right. Yep.
The filament light that you can't touch. You know, it will make you miserable. You know, all those like Aries 650 that were amazing. I still use them, by the way, when I get a chance. But I give you another piece of information. I think you will appreciate this. Let me see if I can have it right here on my mess. And bear with me 1 second. I think you will love this. There you go. Let me go through Grogu to get this.
You remember I was going to say, I've loved you in Andor so far.
Remember this?
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Oh, this is the shit, man. This is the director series.
AFI director series with Steven Spielberg.
Yeah. I mean, it's everyone. It was there.
Oh, he's just on the front.
It's the one that I got from eBay. No. I mean, it's like one episode for each of these guys. You know, and I mean, look it up. This is how, I mean, early 2000 something, it was being showcased on TNT in South America. And of course with subtitles, everything. And I was watching that every single night because they have all these directors from there, like Zemeckis, you know, Brian De Palma, for Coppola, and I mean, probably 10 more. And the most iconic one, James Cameron. So they talk about these movies with the special features. This right here. So now this is a DVD. And Scene Access, Filmography and Awards, web links. That I don't know how you get access to a web link from a
you need a CD player on your fucking laptop.
I don't know, but these things are on eBay right now, and I haven't gone full on in the collection. I plan to do it, but this is like a similar to what you say now, and directors, and this is like a lot of info right here, and they just talk like this show from Bravo inside the actor studio, something similar. And with all these directors like sharing all this info and stories in a very candid way, very comfortable setting. So probably that I'm sure that in YouTube. So look it up. I think you'll have a kick out of it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to, before I post this episode, I'm gonna have to go buy those DVDs so that
buy
the episode goes up.
All.
You know,
buy them all. That's why I don't talk about lenses sometimes on Facebook something like that, because I've seen it. They spike, you know. So it's like a big secret. Ryan Avery is the only one that I call and text and geek out about lenses, because we said, no, we can't say anything.
Right. Yeah. I did the same thing with, because I've had this Nikon F2 for a really long time. So I've got like a full set of Nikkor AIS primes.
Oh, beautiful lenses, man. Yeah.
Amazing, right? They're like, the way I've always described them is they have kind of the same character as like your Canon F lenses, but they're just a little sharper, a little clearer, a little more like refined, a little higher resolution. But I was talking to Alex Nelson from Zero Optic on Lens Month.
Yeah.
And we were both geeking out about it. And then we were like, fuck, now everyone's going to go on eBay and buy. Sure enough, I go on eBay. They're like $800 a piece now.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely crazy the way it's working out right now. I don't know how you have so many people in the world buying lenses, and by the time I was the only person that would be around cameras 20 years ago. And now like it's like a blossoming world with full-on DPs talking about characters and shit on lenses. Just a good time. It's like a renaissance, right? But yeah, and just a controversial statement, since you gave me permission earlier on to say whatever I want.
Yeah.
I believe, and I'll get beat up later, but I believe that the Nikon AIS are superior than FDs. That's my take.
I agree. I agree.
I prefer, and I have like a weakness for the long ones, for the 105, the 135, the 180. The 180 is beautiful, So I think those are beautiful lenses that they're gonna probably go high in price after your podcast is out.
Right.
But yeah, beautiful lenses, and I have a buddy of mine in Daniel in the UK that score a couple ones on eBay, already converted to PL. Beautiful. I was like so jealous, but yeah, so beautiful lenses.
Yeah. Luckily, I tend to shoot the Canon C series cameras, so that little Nikon to EF adapter is like, $5, super thin. Just
yeah. I shot an entire film in the jungle in the Amazons in 2015. With two Nikon AS primes. It was like a 28 and a 50, and that's it.
Yep.
And I was like in Brussels,
and they're so small and so light.
No, they're tiny. And I was in Brussels 2 weeks ago showing Dambusters for the first time, and they had like trailers, and I came to the beautiful surprise that they were showing this film that I shot in Peru in 2015. They're in a DCP with all these like little Nikon lenses, and it looked fine to me.
Well,
I was expecting it.
Kubrick used to shoot the AIS lenses.
Yes.
So there's your permission.
Yeah. He was heavy on that on those ones. He loved the Cook Barrow 2100, which is a lens I own too. I believe it's just very cumbersome to use it, but it's beautiful, and it produced the most beautiful looking shots to my taste in this movie, Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah.
The ballroom scene when he's like dancing, it's like Christmas light in the back. And I mean, it's beautiful, and that's the lens, that he loved the zoom. So yeah, whatever Kubrick does is fine for the rest of us as peasants, right?
When you were talking about there being a run on lenses, the other one that I've been asked, because I have like the podcast and write for ProVideo and a little bit of YouTube stuff, I'll get some comments, questions, and stuff. But even from my friends, there are so many people trying to buy DV cameras or even VHS, but people think they want VHS and then they realize they actually want DV because VHS is fucking complicated. But there are, a DVX 100 is going for like $2,000 on eBay right now.
No way! Wow, I was checking like not long ago for the VX 1000. Remember that camera?
Well, that's impossible to find because of the skateboard community.
The skater, yeah. And I remember wooden camera came out.
The microphone?
I don't know. Yes, like 4 years ago or something like that. So you can use the microphone and mimic the VX 1000 vibe with the chunky thing on top, right? That camera, I used it for my first crappy, this awfully done short films in Argentina. So I have a strong relationship with the camera, and in the PAL world, like 25 frames per second. So it was better than what you guys were getting here because you guys were getting 30 frames per second. So I was closer to a film look, right?
And PAL had more resolution by a little bit, like 30 lines, I think.
And he had like a weird thing that is like a fake widescreen, like a fake anamorphic type of crap, right? So I remember, so I shot it that way. And everyone was like beating me up, how come you do this stuff, right? And I found like one geek from a different university that was able to do it in a G4, Final Cut G4, maybe Final Cut Studio 3 or something like that, or 2, and there was like a decrease type of version, so I can get a little bit more width with my awful short film. But that's why I love that camera, And then I believe it was used for this movie, that actually pretty good movie, Dancer in the Dark, Bjork. We need to check the trivia. We need to check the trivia on that one, or IMDb or something like that, because I'm pretty sure that they will use it. So yeah, I did something. I went online, and it's freaking expensive. Even the Canon XLS1, remember that one?
The 1S. I actually have the 2 in my closet right now.
Oh man, I love that camera with the bulky thing here, the wide thing, the fluoride lens. Yeah, that camera was like, I made it. I'm big. Back in my time, I was shooting with that thing and shoulder here. Beautiful viewfinder.
I got that for college. Oh, great viewfinder. But yeah, I got that thing for college. Amazing. I brought it back out actually just to test it, just to see what was up. But obviously you can't find mini DV tapes anywhere. And I think my friend David Burchell, if he's ever listening, broke the deck, and Canon couldn't fix it because it was like we were in college. So it was like 2009 or something like that. So they were like, we're not going to fix that.
Yeah.
But I went from the S video port to an HDMI adapter to my Odyssey 7Q Plus.
Beautiful.
So I'm getting full HD out of the XL2, more or less.
Beautiful. And you can swap lenses on that thing. You can swap lenses. It's a complicated process that, I mean, you can always get
technically those lenses. A mirrorless camera.
Yeah, but this director, Danny Boyle, made
28 Days Later.
Groundbreaking film. I love the film. He did, I can't remember the lenses he used, but of course, not the Canon lenses. I think it were like Cinema Primes or something in that body, doing some, and it's a small sensor, so you get like a different angle of view or whatever. So it's tricky, but it's a camera worth exploring. And I have a couple beta cameras in my house that I purchased from a church a few months ago, for a small donation, and they were very happy with it. And I did the same thing like you. I have an Atomos, so I did this HDMI adapter thingy, that upscale it, and I got it down to like a beautiful 4:3 1080p something. I think there's something that I understand quite, because I don't know if it's doing an output of 60p, which is interlaced in a way. But I don't know if it's the Atomos is like reading that interlaced. That's the part that I'm not too savvy enough to understand it. But
I would
it was
assume it's de-interlacing. If the adapter isn't changing it, I would assume that Atomos de-interlaces it, because there's so little interlaced content now, unless you're doing broadcast, that I imagine that the consumer devices just don't even bother.
That would be great, because I suffer in this film, Dambusters. I had a couple of assets from the 90s from Switzerland that they were interlaced, and they gave us hell in post-production. Not because the guy, I mean, it was because my fault, because I started using it, those assets, reinterpreting on the timeline and messing up everything. So at the very end, before the DCP, we had to go in a whole different world for the interlacing 2 shots. So when I get this, and I got this Amazon like cheapo $20 little box, that has like an upscale option.
That's what I did. That's literally what I did. Yeah.
You select 720 and 1080. It's like, wow, I can do. So
I'm gonna do HD. Thank you.
yeah. So I see that Kenny and I were geeks about stuff like that's good.
Yeah. I do want to shoot first of all, shoot a goofy project on that beta cam, put it on the internet. You'll be more famous than if you were to spend $1 million on a fucking feature.
Oh yeah, it's like it has a texture, it has a look to it, So
yeah, I was actually just talking to Charles Pepper, who shot Key and Peele and stuff like that. That podcast. This will date when we're recording this, but that podcast just went up. And we were talking about how kind of the same thing, where all these people are like trying to get a hold of DV cameras or high 8 cameras for that aesthetic. And he was saying how they had to do a lot of that for Key and Peele. And in his opinion, only the tube cameras cannot be replicated in post. Everything else can be more or less done with modern tools.
I agree with it. I agree with actually, and this is the famous Ikigami 79, that created this kind of like the cradle of music video, right? The 80s and MTV, the British started with the stuff, right? So yeah, that's a look that a lot of artists nowadays, they want to emulate it, but it can be done, because it's exactly what you say. It's freaking tube, it's different. You have it's an example about it. It's this movie, which is a great movie, by the way, from Chile, named No, N-O, with Gael Garcia Bernal. And the movie was shot in U-matic, and complete U-matic tapes, which is the 3/4. Right? Yeah. And it's like great DP. I know the guy, took up a masterclass with the guy, Sergio Armstrong, and a major figure, Gael Garcia Bernal, right? Pablo Larraín, the guy that did Jackie film, and great director from Chile the last 20 years. And this movie is about the marketing campaign to get rid of the dictatorship in the late 80s. So it was like 88. And they said, okay, we want the movie to look like the 88s. The movie's about a marketing firm doing these commercials. Let's shoot in U-matic, the same thing that they were using. So it's phenomenal the way they actually achieve it. Not in post, they actually got refurbished cameras, U-matic, from all the formats and mediums, And then of course it gets like the post-production process, which is it had like a 35 millimeter print in certain festivals and the DCP and so on, right? But it's a great film that it was actually shortlisted for the Oscars. It didn't win, but it was the 5 finalists, yeah, maybe 5 years ago or something. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it really is like a fun, now that we've kind of been creeping up on this, but like now that honestly any camera, I tell people who are just getting into filmmaking, like just buy whatever camera you think is cool, just get that. Don't go online and be like, is this the bit? If you're just starting, just get the first thing that you can afford. It's going to be great. Like you're going to be fine. You don't have to deal. When I was telling one guy, like a student, like the fact that you don't have to deal with log and capture, you can save the SD cards. It's already in 24p. You don't have to do the weird down sampling. Like your life is a dream. Just shoot the fucking film.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I completely agree with it. I purchased recently a Canon AH1, AH1, because I shot some stuff in 2007 that I couldn't get in any deck. Yeah, XH1, something like that. It's the Sony, no, it's the Canon response to the Sony Z1. Yep. Remember that camera? Yeah, so it's kind of same thing with the dial, with the kind of like the jog and travel thingy.
It's like a shortened XL2, but in 4K.
Yeah, exactly, in black
or HD.
Black. No. Yeah, if full HD, and so I shot some stuff in that camera years ago, and I decided on my spare time, maybe some time ago, to like capture those tapes. So I got a HDB Sony capture deck, a Panasonic, and nothing would take it. It was kind of like a proprietary Canon thing. So I had to track down the camera. Someone had it in Baltimore, deliver it to me for like $175, which is beautiful. And it was like the deal of the century. With a couple of batteries. With no power source, but I do have the batteries. So those BP batteries, boom, I swap in there, and the tapes were in there. Like it was yesterday. I was able to capture it, and of course, log and capture. The whole thing is like you go like and it took me a while to actually figure it out. I was kind of rusty. I was feeling a little bit bad. I couldn't do this, but it was my bread and butter 15 years ago. Now you just can't do it, but it was fun. It was a good exercise because I get asked a lot about this stuff, which camera should I get? I read this article about this new camera. And I usually, I tell people just like you, just buy whatever camera you can afford and make it work. But if I can give you an advice on what camera you should get, I usually say the original Blackmagic Cinema Pocket.
I agree. The tiny one is great, but I also think the weird cheese wedge gray one is actually pretty good too. But the little pocket, if you can get a battery solution for the little guy, it's great.
And that's the exact reason that I recommend the one, because the generation now, these kids now, they had it perfect. They're pretty spoiled now. Cameras are beautiful. If they can afford getting a Red or an Arri, they're set. So but for us, that we had to learn a few generations earlier, we had to really struggle with things out. So I think that camera is a good compromise between like still a raw format, which if you can output in or actually record natively on Cinema DNG, which is like a pretty capable format. At some point will be extinct, but for now it's fine. And you have a lot of limitations, like the battery, like you said, it's ridiculous. You put one battery there, it's like 10 minutes worth of camera, but the camera produces like a nice image, and it makes you talk to a camera like the way we learn, like in cold temperature, like ISO or ASA, and then when you get this actual footage, you can process it, in DaVinci, because it's going to be Cinema DNGs, that you can't really play anywhere. So. Right. I love that camera. I still own one actually, and it's a beautiful camera with like some old Russian Soviet primes that I have in there, from 16 millimeter cameras. So yeah, that's a camera that you should recommend. Get the camera and embrace the flaws that it has, and you will learn. And some people come back to me saying, "Yeah, good camera."
Well, and something that I've said a lot on this podcast is that when people. Well, there's like two ends to this thought. The first one is when people say like, oh, how do I make my thing look, quote unquote, more like film? Mm-hmm. When we said that, we just talked about this on the last podcast, actually, when we said that back in the early 2000s or the 90s, we were not referencing photochemical film as such. We were just trying to make things look professional. And now like that vernacular has continued. But when people say, I want this to look like film, what they often means is the thing that they remember looking high quality. So now that the original Pocket is old enough, I just looked at footage of that yesterday, so that someone had shot. I think they put it on Reddit, and it looks better than you remember, because now that's your nostalgia point. And like, no matter where you are on the timeline of new cinema technology, the newest thing will always look too clear.
Yeah, too crisp, too sharp, or So it's like the little nostalgia factor that we don't really understand, but it's kind of like embedded in our brain, right? Yeah. It's there. We don't really fully get it. I mean, we get it because we're more trained, because we're kind of in the field, right? But the normal audience. So yeah, I mean, in that camera, if you take the time and patience to do an upscale on DaVinci, that will give you like, I don't know, like 0.3 seconds per minute or something like that.
Yeah.
And it will make a beautiful 4K image if you really need to deliver something else. So your final master, you can output in 4K or Ultra HD. It will be fine. It looks great. And DaVinci will do it. Yeah, you can select how much the sharpening you want, how strong the denoise you want it to be. I always keep it in medium. And it looks fine. It looks actually on par with whatever you can watch now,
Yep. I did the same thing with the C1. Now I have a C500 Mark II, but when I was running the C100 Mark II, I would always just export in 4K. No one knew the difference.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, it depends how you do it, right? It's a couple of tricks, right? But any capable software nowadays will do it just fine. You don't need to go to a studio and a lab to do it and forget about it. You can do it in your house and it's fine.
Yeah. Now with the documentary with Dambusters, did you shoot all Blackmagic? I got an email saying that you had like done the whole thing with Blackmagic, but it was a mix of cameras, wasn't it?
Yeah. So basically, all the stuff that I shot was the original fresh content was Blackmagic. It was like the Ursa 12K, the Ursa 12K, and the 6K. The 6K was probably the most versatile camera, being a documentary in nature. I can just be everywhere with this camera, and it just came out. So no really rigging solutions, but they work in my favor. So it was kind of like the dot cam. It was like with the eyepiece, with the battery grip, and you just kind of work this way, right? So a lot of stuff it was shot that way. Those are the main cameras, but you have a challenge when you are depicting a documentary that has certain archival images or refers to different eras. You get footage from different agencies, so you get footage from different guys that were covering a dam removal. So I had to work with some Sony stuff that was provided to me, and in all sorts of flavors of Sony, like Rec 709 to like S-Log 3, and in Lithuania, I had one difference though. I had a guy which is like he's a Spielberg of Lithuania, Mindaugas, a great guy. He's like 6'5", he's like a giant fella, and the guy is super respected there, and he was so set on not using any other camera than his camera. So I asked him, okay, so what camera do you have? I have a F55 Sony. Okay.
Okay.
Great
camera, but come on, man.
I would say, dude, okay, what can we do here? So the guy I really wanted to work with him because Lithuania was my first time there. I don't speak the language, of course, I was going into a very deep, remote, ancient forest, and he did a film about the ancient forest, right? So I was feeling, okay, it's good to have this guy next to me, and I can do my own thing and have him more like a second unit, which is exactly what he did, right? And that's why he didn't want to try something different. So in that scene of Lithuania, we use his camera. The guy is super sweet, very, very easy to work with. But then I understood why he wanted that camera, right? So that camera had to be matched with two Blackmagics, and we just gave him lenses essentially. So he kept one of my suitcase of lenses with the Kinas and stuff like that. It was fine. There's a couple of things that he wanted to do with his own CP Prime. I mean, it was like a Compact Prime 3. Yeah, Compact Prime 3 size. He used a 15 mil. Yeah, a 15 mil for center wide shots and things like that, which is, of course, it's like a different sensor, but it gives you like a wideish point of view anyways. And he did a good job with it, and he was completely married. There was no way that you can change his mind. And I respected that because I was a foreigner. I was in a different country. I wanted to be nice with my colleagues. And kind of like the most prolific director there. So I want to respect the guy, you know. And I came across like a beautiful image that it was easy to match because we shot it with the added raw thing that goes on top. So the camera was huge.
That's why I kind of groaned, because it's a massive camera.
It's massive.
It's a beautiful camera, but
produces beautiful image. With a Super 35 sensor, it will output 4K 120, I believe, and raw flavors from the Sony raw flavor stuff from that era. And what else? And it has a global shutter, so it helps when you do a handheld interview stuff like that. You know, if you're moving fast. And yeah, so he was super married with it, and like I said, I respect that. And that was probably the one that I thought that there would be more challenges to match with the Blackmagics, but the Blackmagic cameras were like very filmicky in a way, you know. So that camera matched nicely because that camera is kind of like the predecessor of the Sony Venice, you know, the Venice One, right? So it's kind of like that high gamma, you know, cameras that I've seen like shows with the camera. You know, it's amazing camera. It's really good if you get the right glass, you know, the right post production, the camera shines, and you will never know what type of camera it is, right? But I was a little bit afraid about the post production process. But it worked in my favor actually. That the three cameras, they have this filmicky texture to it, you know. And the new color science from the Blackmagic by that time was a new one, the Gen 5. It was like really easy to match with that S-Log 2 that the camera produced. You know, so I didn't have any issues. I mean, not me, because I was not physically being the colorist, but I was in constant communication. I edited the whole thing with proxies. You know, we matched the best effort in the proxy category. But then it was like the media management from DaVinci was what impressed me the most, you know, because then you can export the entire timeline with the raw metadata with a trim option. So the giant file that was like an interview that you shot in raw formats is now a tiny file, you know, that you still retains the quality. So the post-production guy, you know, he was able to just send everything from my computer, put on the server, you know, 800 gigabyte, almost a terabyte, you know, it goes there, and then the colorist in his studio downloads the whole thing, you know, and replicates same info, the same timeline in his computer, so we can unleash everything, you know, as opposed to export your timeline on ProRes 4444 HQ or something like that. You just working that way. So those cameras were like super awesome to work with. You know, they were rugged enough. You know, they never fail. You know, and they produced what I needed for the budget that I needed to work with. You know, so instead of having one ARRI, I can have like 4 Blackmagic, 3 Blackmagics. You know, and so
right.
I take it. You know, why not?
For I suppose we should explain what the documentary is.
Yeah, we'll talk about the documentary now.
Yeah, because now we've talked about the camera so much, it's like, well, what the fuck are they being used for? But would you like to explain kind of what Dambusters is about for those who don't know?
Yeah, so Dambusters is a film about what we call river heroes. River heroes are individuals in different countries of Europe. It's a movie that it takes place in Europe. It's for Europeans restoring rivers, and how they restore them. They remove either dams that are obsolete or obstacles such as culvert, or like in the US they're called culvert, and or weirs in how they call it in the UK, right? So this is a manifestation of how you can bring nature back after centuries or decades of abuse by rivers. You can see a tangible process when you move a dam, and that reservoir or lake, it gets a river, the river that used to be there, and how the meadows come back, you know, the flora and fauna thrives, and nature comes back, you know. So it was a film that we had to film in very remote areas in France, Spain, Estonia, Lithuania, Finland, in the border with Russia. That was fun to fly drones right there. I will tell you later about it. You know, and the US. So that was like the US kind of like the beacon from Europe. The US started with dam removals back in the 80s, and in California with small dams. So the Europeans started saying, okay, we are intervening rivers since the Romans with aqueducts, with some sort of reservoir. And now we are in an era of climate change. This monster with climate change is destroying everything. Things are changing. We have to be resilient and adapt to climate change, right? So they started removing dams. For them, it's like a first economical reason, while I'm more radical. I will say just blow them out, and have energy being replaced by windmills or turbines of some sort or solar power. I don't think we need dams, but that would be a different philosophical chat. But for Europeans, they started since they're more efficient about this stuff, and they assess the ones that are not producing any economical value for the population. So they map out a few ones that they were delivering to a grid system. I don't know, a megawatt or something, and that doesn't add anything. So bye bye. And some of them they will be explosive. So you get the Tom Cruise like explosion.
Right. Some really cool footage in even in the trailer. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other ones are slower, like a year worth of like some sort of construction work and excavator or stuff like that, right? So that's the film Dambusters, and it follows the journey of a female scientist, engineer slash engineer from Spain that goes into his countries to learn about the stories about these dams that have been removed, how they did it, and in some of the cases were ongoing cases. So you can see in the film how nature is claiming its rights back. So that is the whole film about ambassadors. Very challenging because I was presented with the assignment and many countries. So of course, going back to the camera stuff, I had to try. I will spend a lot of money traveling. I'll spend a lot of money hiring assistants in every country because I needed like a small crew. Each country has like a crew of like 4 or 5. In Spain, Spain was like the smallest one because I felt more comfortable in Spain, and it turned out to be the most difficult one. It's like typical thing. You are in pre-production, you feel, it's gonna be fine, and then you arrive there and it's a mess. So that's the one that I regret having a smaller team. And the other ones, 4 or 5 was the norm, and I knew that would be super limited because we were doing this film in the middle of the pandemic. We had to spend money in COVID tests, going to labs, and getting like so much security stuff in everywhere. And I couldn't afford to get COVID or any of my team members get COVID because it will be shutting down. And who knows when we can resume this. And I will lose opportunity to see something going in right now, right? So I had to like really put money on like safety and things like that. And then the question was, okay, how we do this stuff? I own a couple like magic cameras. I tested many extensively, and I shoot usually in red. I'm kind of on the red world for clients or my other films, but I feel really comfortable with the Blackmagics now, and it was like a decision of having more cameras at my disposal. If something fails, I prefer to have another camera, rather than just renting and going out. And the cameras really surprised me. And by that time, the 6K Pro was a very new camera, right out. So I love the beauty of having the NDs, in the tip of my finger, right? Having like a beautiful battery grip that will give me what I needed, and the eyepiece. I love the eyepiece because I'm very driven by the viewfinder, the eyepiece. I like the shoulder camera. I hear like that look, So that camera kind of tick all the boxes to me, and I saw myself using more that camera. And when I had more people around me or a type of situation, the Ursa 12K was a beautiful camera that can deliver a beautiful landscape, but at the same time can be cinematic if you are doing like a nice close-up because you have that texture, which is like a filmicky look that I really like, and then all the other cameras, like the Sonys, that were given to me as folders I got to use from different colleagues. The new Sonys, we spent time making them look like the Blackmagics,
Right.
So they have taking out the sharpness, an opportunity that some footage from the FX3 was given to me, and it's like an iPhone. That thing is it's like it has a sharpening option that you can turn off, as in today. Maybe the firmware would be different and things like that. Beautiful camera, anyways. In capable hands, you can do wonders with those cameras. But I needed something more with that type of look. I didn't want to have the look of a natural history film because this is not a natural history film, and I didn't want to have a TV look. So right in between the choice of lenses, of course, the grading at the very end, and the cameras were like a trifecta of things. that made me feel super comfortable, and I felt like these cameras are goddamn reliable, And I read horror stories before from different cameras. Each camera will have it horror stories, right? But they were wonderful for me, and I learned to love them and use them for specific projects. They're terrific. The equation value, value, and capabilities, I think that had to be playing out for what you pay for them.
Yeah, I agree. The only thing I didn't like, I reviewed the 6K Pro and loved almost everything about. I love the menu systems, all the metadata is gorgeous. I would use I'd have all my data and like my false color in the eyepiece. So I would use the LCD as like kind of a blank, just the image, and I'd use that for composition and checking things out. And then in the eyepiece, I had like all of my data stuff up, and I found that very helpful. But I don't need it to be, especially with that battery grip. I don't need it to. I got small hands. I don't need it to look like a DSLR. Just make it a cube. Just make it a cube.
Yeah.
Like everything about that camera is great. Just make it a better shape.
And it's hard to understand why they're not making because everyone wants a cube because it's very easy to. It's modular, and if you think about the company history, back in that they have this cube with a micro cinema camera. Right. So they have a history of making cubes. Everyone's making cubes. I think is the right way. And this is it is a hybrid weird shape. It's a bulky DSLR, like you just said, right? So you have like the same way to have it here. You have your thumb to change stuff. You have like right here. So yeah, it is absolutely a DSLR hybrid way, right? Like it was like 10 years ago when we were all excited about the 7D or the 5D, right? It was kind of same weird, annoying shape, right? But that camera, for that context, the way it was fine. My beef with the camera, if I had the permission to say something about it, is the 6 stops ND. That to my taste, it has like a shift on the thing. Yeah, and I'm very curious about NDs. For some reason, I get so mad when I have like a color shift. Nothing major.
Oh, the color shift. Oh,
yeah. Everything was able to be matched in post with like easy tints and stuff. Nothing major that I can't use this image. No, not at all. Small stuff. But I would love that camera to have like probably a step up version of the ND, or maybe I don't know if they claim that it's infrared ND. I can't remember. But it would be great that when you are on 4 stops and 6 stops, you don't get any color shift, because that drives me nuts. So especially, and the camera, even when you're working on full on sun, and then you have like a shadow area, which is the nature of what we do with this like streams, covered by trees. Yeah, when you are like on the 400 base ISO, you're kind of suffering the base, so you bump it to the next one native ISO, which will be 3200. And then you have to start NDing, right? So to protect your image and the QC of everything and the logic behind this dual ISO. But in that point, super clean image in any ISO, not issues at all. My only beef is that one, the NDs. To me, the 2 stops ND is great. The 4 and 6 stop is like, I have my issues. So again, we'll mention another time Ryan Avery from Tokina, because I'm a huge fan of the Tokina ones. So in certain cases, I build the camera with a matte box with the Tokina infrared NDs, which are by far my favorites. So I was well equipped to see it on set. Okay, this is shifting. Plug it. Let's go in a matte box and put everything there, and yeah, it worked fine. But it's the only thing that I will warn people. Don't expect too much of the NDs. It's gonna be fine if you're filming your dog, but yeah.
And if those are the only 2 complaints, a little color shift and the body's kind of a funny shape, like how much is that camera? $1,600?
Like, the camera, I believe it goes by $2,500, and if you buy 25? It with and I think if you get the battery grip and you get the eyepiece, you're gonna be probably above $3,000.
Still, that is for what you're getting there with your Blackmagic Raw, especially. Like,
it's a great codec. No, that's why I think it's for the value, for what you're actually paying for it. and understanding the business model of Blackmagic, that they don't outsource stuff, they do it on their own, and yeah, so they in Australia, certain components are made by third party, right? But it's a terrific camera. I'm a huge fan of cameras. I always defend them in forums by snobby EDPs that they complain about it. But it's a very terrific camera, and of course, for certain times I always have a sound guy. That's something that you don't cheap out. You need to have a sound guy.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Let's tack that onto the beginning of production value.
Yeah, let's go. Get a sound guy. Get a sound guy. Get a legit one that will give you one that will talk about your time codes with you and things like that. That's the one you want. And always get a sound guy that will tell you to stop a shot because it's a bad noise or whatever. That's the sound guys I like. Not the ones that are afraid of telling you stop. No, you need to get the one that I will have the personality to tell you stop. Otherwise, because my job is in the line. Then you're gonna complain about me because I have a freaking bird here or the airplane that you can't hear. So those are the songs I like. I was very lucky in Dambusters. I got a couple of guys, one in France, and one in Lithuania. It was amazing. So I was like very spoiled in that regard. But I didn't get to use the good sound inputs that the camera has because I have two mini XLRs. Right. So if you're in a pinch, you can go straight there, and the menu is super easy to navigate. So you can literally have everything into this camera and put like a lavalier or even a boom if you have an extra pair of hands, right? So camera is like a good beast that will give you anything you want, you can get in that camera, and so that's why I have a huge respect for the camera. I like the values of the company and the CEO, Grant Petty. I think they do good stuff. And like I said, I defend those cameras. I mean, they provide an excellent image for the cost,
Yeah. I did want to ask how you actually got involved in making the documentary. Was that something that was kind of, are you like so I, been a snowboarder my whole life. And so climate change is a very important issue to me because if
you're not gonna have it's like I would sand snowboard or whatever, sunboarding.
Yeah, it would be like I've had the thought, like, how insane would it be if I had to tell my grandkids, like, yeah, we used to like show them photos, like we used to do this for recreation. You can't do it anymore, and that's why we don't have any water. But
no, and that's where you head, unfortunately. And you can see it because you live in California, which you see a visual representation of things changing quite often.
Yeah.
With like cataclysms, and Wi-Fi or stuff like that, right? And the water scarcity. So how Dambusters came to life? So I was born around beautiful rivers. So that's one thing, beautiful rivers that they kind of shape me. The colors are part of my palette in a way. That's how I see life, but and I will spend my days on a weekend swimming in the stream, pristine one, opening my eyes and seeing the fish around me. So I have these very fond memories of growing up around nature and being in tune with nature. So I made a decision probably, 5 years ago that no matter what I do in my life in terms of agency work or my own projects, right, I have to give at least 50% to environmental causes. So I put my company in service and my skill set in service, if you will, to just do whatever I can to do pieces that can help somehow or can provide these messages out, right? So rivers are an important part of who I am, and I've been advocating for rivers for a long time. I did things around rivers, but then I came up to a conclusion that I need to show like a tangible process, and dam removal is probably one of the most tangible things that you can see now, because you remove the dam, and in a couple of weeks, nature is back. And also, it's a way to really show people, this is it, this works, this is not theory. So I did a film for people associated to this campaign back in 2018. That was about fish migration and rivers, and it had like a little chapter in the film about dam removals, and now we can think about removing dams. From then, a natural thing from a filmmaker, and this stuff is like, okay, what's going to be next? What's going to be my next passion project, or when I'm going to find my voice to be fulfilled with something else, right? And I felt like I talk about fish migration, I talk about rivers, and I felt like that little chapter could be like a spin-off of something bigger. And then we talk to these people in Europe and say, hey, next one we should do the Dambusters. It's these guys finding dams everywhere and blowing them up, with TNT and all the stuff, right? And sledgehammers. Let's see that so people can get inspired. And
fucking
the
man
plan was,
shit.
yeah, exactly. Like Vikings destroying shit. And the plan was very ambitious, and we wanted to do a story in each continent. So I had the whole thing half sold with different entities in different continents. The Koreans were paying for one option, their storyline. The Australians the government was paying for their storyline, and I was like ready to go, getting excited, and then COVID came.
Right.
And COVID was the busiest time of my life. I was very blessed and lucky that I got work throughout the entire time, so I was fine. But travel was challenging. So even though I did a lot of traveling in COVID, and domestically, I went to Mexico a few times for another film. I did Europe. These countries in Asia or Australia were very tough, and even South America. So you couldn't go there just because, right? You had to get permits from the government. So it became really impossible to fulfill the dream of getting a reverse storyline in each continent. So then the World Wildlife Fund, WWF, in the Netherlands, talked to me and said, "Hey, we like your idea. It's really good. We're going to fund you for a certain percentage of the budget, but do it in Europe only, because that's what we care now. It's going to fit our agenda, our communication plans, and it's easy for you to travel. And otherwise, you have to wait years, And I'm telling you, the negotiation started in 2020, right? So it was like COVID. We couldn't really maneuver that much. And they paid for it. And then we decided to go on production in this summer 2021, like a year back, right? So that's how the long story short, how we were able to do it, with the trust of many entities. And then it became easier because my company and myself, we get associated with them, not like in a business way, but we put the company there, we put the post-production, we put the cameras. So of course, if I'm limited and I'm like in a way putting a lot of my own time or my in-kind contribution, I got to think with the cameras I have, so I got to think efficiently. So that's why I have the cameras. I have the Blackmagic cameras for some production work. Some clients actually in the DC area, they love the camera, so they keep asking me for that camera. So I bought it and I had it around, and we put it into service. So that's kind of like the full cycle of how the Dambuster happened. But it's really linked to my own interest of doing stories around nature. It becomes challenging because I'm a father. I have to leave the family for extensive periods of time when I travel. They're not easy. You work 20 hours per day in this project, so you get like really burned out. But it feels good when it's out. When we can talk about the movie now, when it's being streamed for a few limited weeks, and then we'll go on a different platform, or it's being a cinema script and a DCP. It's kind of like, okay, this is it, right? This is why we do these crazy things, because we want to be in this room with a dim light and that sound and that projector. That's pretty much what you expect for. But yeah, I'm quite happy about this one. I feel good about the way it turned out, and it's been great to start the process of like showing it. Because we're just starting.
Yeah, it's I've only interviewed a couple people who've done nature documentaries, but I always feel strongly about them for the reasons that I said. And I growing up, especially in Northern California, in the forests in Yosemite and all that stuff, is very it's weirdly important to me. Like I feel like when people say like, "Oh, you're ruining my childhood," when the new Star Wars has come out, I don't feel that way. I feel that way about like forests burning.
Yeah, and you're on the right. Yeah, you're on the right track, because that's what mattered the most. That's what. And I think going back to nature, I think nature was in favor of this film to happen, because when I went to film this in the Baltic countries, which Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia, and Finland, I had like sun until 11 p.m. So it's like 6 a.m. I will get this like beautiful light, which is like starting to sunrise, right? 7 a.m. will be full on. And so I had to go. So I was feeling a little bit bad about it, because I was like telling everyone, okay, we'll have to stop when the light is gone. Since Yeah. So it was like a massive, horrid, I don't know, like 15, 16, 17 hours a day, which is inhuman if you do it for our standards.
Right.
But I presented this idea super ashamed to everyone because we come from, I'm not unionized, but we come from like the 10 hours, 12 hours, and we respect why everyone has to stop, especially in Europe, they like to take their time. But I came across these guys that they were saying, look, we only get to shoot 2 or 3 months a year. So we use every minute of it. So we don't fucking care. We're gonna be like working the entire day. We're happy. This is what we do, and it's an amazing opportunity for us. Okay. So days that will be right and a whole country that enormous scenario if I had to go to California, right? It will be probably a week of filming there. I could have done it 2 or 3 days
Yeah.
because exponentially I was able to use light more in beautiful light. The tones you get, at certain times of day is just beautiful. You just need to put the camera there, don't mess up your exposure, and you're gonna get a beautiful image. You don't need to be that good about it. But that was probably one of the nature, in a way, I felt like nature was on our side that way, that we're trying
Yeah.
to do the best we could, to increase this awareness and create positive messages about nature coming back and things like that. This time was nature giving it back to us. And okay, long days. I never experienced that because I had experience shooting a lot in Central Europe, which is like Spain, France, Netherlands. I did a lot of stuff there, but not in this part of the world. And it's not
Right.
like Greenland or that you get like a strip of light for an hour, when you're in the winter, which is the opposite, right? But yeah, it was like such a blessing to have these beautiful long days, and great weather pretty much, So
I was
I said,
I was going to say I was just in Whitefish, Montana, and kind of the same thing. The
oh,
sun would come
Montana.
up at like 7 and go down at no joke like 10:30. So
Oh.
there was one day where we got dinner and then went paddleboarding and got like a tan at like 8 p.m.
Yeah, you experience like something that, yeah, hardcore. Yeah, a ton. Okay, that was that was good. It's, yeah, Montana. I haven't been in Montana actually. This is definitely my bucket list. I haven't been there. I definitely want to do Montana one day. Wyoming, all that stuff is kind of like
Yeah,
the last frontier of the U.S. Haven't been there yet.
yeah, I run college ski trips every winter. So we're about to go do that in December and January. And there's this beautiful town called Steamboat in Colorado, and it's right near the Wyoming border. So if you ever feel the need to go check all that out at once, highly recommend the old Steamboat.
That's the one. And since you're a snowboarder, the city that I was born in, Chile, has the longest ski track of South America.
Really?
It's 13 kilometers. You gotta do the math and 2 miles. I always get messed up with that. But all the teams from the Winter Games, like the Swiss, the German, the Austrians, the Finnish, they're all gonna be there in our summer, which is like for you the winter, right? Because the opposite
Right.
season. They're gonna be training hard, and buying off these resorts for the entire team. So they prepare for like, I don't know, like Sochi or
Right.
Osaka. I don't remember, So you will appreciate that probably, and beautiful long slopes for snowboarding and stuff. Offline, I will send you some stuff because it's. I wasn't I wasn't a snowboarder. I was more I was more in the Pacific because my country is very narrow, so I can be in an hour either in a volcano on the top of a mountain or in the Pacific. Yes.
Yeah.
So I was into bodyboarding was my thing.
Sure.
I was more in the ocean, but all my classmates and my friends were like, and I was always going with them. This beautiful ski town. It's like a little Aspen type of thing up in the mountains. So you will appreciate that to learn a little
Totally.
more. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Chile and Japan are two countries that I want to go snowboarding in because I've just seen ridiculous footage of waist deep powder and just open mountains, and it's a lot of fun.
And I'm telling you, like when you're doing like the designated areas, if you go like off track, if you go to the deep trails of Patagonia, it's like whatever you want, essentially.
Yeah, I actually just because we're talking about it, I have no room for anything in my apartment, so like everything's just right next to me, and I just bought this snowboard That like this nice
look at
Jones Stratus with the like fishtail. I don't know. There you go.
Man. Oh, you're serious. You have the good stuff.
Yeah. But Jeremy Jones, the guy who made that snowboard, has a charity called Protect Our Winners, POW, POW, and highly recommend for anyone listening supporting.
I would check
POW.
it out.
Yeah. But we're about a half hour over when I was supposed to keep you, so I'm gonna let you go.
It's all good, buddy.
But I do. A lot. Yeah, me too, dude. We'll definitely have to keep chatting, offline, or I guess online, but off this. But I like to end the podcast with the same two questions ish. Next season, it's going to change a little bit, but the two questions are: firstly, what's the, everyone likes to talk about, what's the best piece of advice you got? That's boring. What's the worst piece of advice you got?
So in my first year in the US, I had a manager. I was in Los Angeles a little bit. That's why I give the same number, the 310 line. And I had this manager that didn't like my name, and it's kind of a longish name. So he said to me, you have to embrace Bono mentality there from YouTube. Just use like one concept, just one name. So he named me Franco. Okay, so I will, because my legal name is Francisco, right? But apparently it's like funny for Americans sometimes, or the movie Elf. Francisco is fun to say, right? So which I don't care about it. So he.
Dude, my name's Kenny. You think 20 years of South Park didn't fuck my day up?
Oh, Kenny, right? Yeah, Kenny G. The 90s sexy saxophone, right?
At least Kenny G was sexy.
Yeah,
he was from South Park, was poor.
Kinky stuff. No, yeah, you have a point there. But so I thought that this great guy taking care of me. He has like a great care for me. So I believe it's bullshit. And then the worst stuff started to happen. So I was having a lot of back issues back then. So my doctor said, take ballet. It's going to help you. So I took ballet classes. I was feeling very funny with it, and some certain things that we can't say in this day and era now, but it was funny to me, but it really helped me. So I was talking to him on the phone, and I said, oh yeah, I feel great. I had this ballet class and my back is great. I can operate camera. And he said to me, oh, are you operating camera with the ballet techniques? I kind of say, yeah, I'm just kind of like doing this stuff. Okay, there you go. You are the Franco cam now, which is a special technique between your handheld skills and ballet. So that's how you had to sell yourself now. Okay, I didn't register that, but the day after, I started getting phone calls from LA guys. Hey, are you the Franco cam? Are you this new thing? And I swear to God, it's not a joke, nothing. So that was the worst advice of my life. This guy telling me to become the Franco cam, which is a balletic experience of handheld. You just picture that. And some guys, reputable movies, they were calling me, to see if I was really the Franco guy, so they can incorporate for certain movies this like balletic technique with me, right? That was the worst advice of my life. I should have said to the guy, hey, shut the fuck up. That doesn't make any sense. But I was kind of like in a vulnerable state. I was very naive, and trying to, make my way in the US, a new country for me. So I was like taking anything, so that's why you can't really get a manager for that. That was the first red flag, a real agency or artist management, they will look for you, looking for them. So that's kind of like an embedded advice there. Don't fall for that manager shit ever. But that was the worst advice of my entire life that sent me back, because I started getting these phone calls and I was getting deceived by it. And then, the manager turned out to be a scammer at the end of the story. But that shaped me in a way, and it gave me a huge like bullshit radar, which is good to have when we're starting, So you're gonna get a lot of awful advices, and you have to just live with it. But the most important thing, going back to the positive aspect, is try to really fine tune your BS radar, because the time that you live, that I used to live too, it has that stuff. It's part of the la la land, right? You're gonna get these guys trying to manipulate and get a few bucks off of you. It's like the hustle mentality. So yeah, it was an unforgettable experience to be the Franco cam balletic skills and handheld meet each other. I don't know how that can possibly happen. Nowadays we have gimbals to the ship or Steadicams, but he convinced people. He was a guy with a a power of persuading very high. That's why they can fool people. But yeah, that was the worst advice.
So the main issue was that people were calling you to do something special, and you were just like, no, I just have a strong back now.
No, because the whole thing was like, he said to me, and actually I have to specify that, to keep going with it, essentially. So I would get this call, and then
identity.
So it was like, I was like really conflicted by it. I was like, I do that. I combine balletic skills with, So I was like the part that I didn't say it right, but that was a big issue. That is like forcing you to put together a bullshit skill set that you think it will take you somewhere because you're so desperate to go anywhere. Right. So you had to stay true to it. You had to like, okay, I'm not gonna get this job. It sounded fancy. They were like legit companies calling me. It was not like a guy that wanted to film like a video project of some sort, like a cheapo music video. They were like legit companies calling me, And when I had like one-on-one talk that actually escalated to like getting me on the team, I fell for it. I kept saying, yeah, I can do that stuff, and I was really conflicted internally. And then I fucked it up even more when I reached out on my own personally to the actual DP, saying that I was excited to work with her, And the DP was crazy, saying, "Hey, I never approved you and the team, and I got fired from Franco Can Balletic Skills, not ever showing out on set." So it was like nowadays I think about it. This was 2009, imagine the world back then. Very old, very, very old story. But you get these awful advices, and it's good to learn that you always have to stay true to who you are, and you're not gonna be liked by everyone. You always have your place, and your path might be probably harder or like harsher, but stay true and don't do this bullshit that I did, that you keep creating this fake thing that it will backfire you, and it did backfire me. So
yeah. Well, and today that, maybe a piece of bad advice that someone would get would be like, oh, I don't know, I'm making this up, but like you should start a TikTok and be like the TikTok filmmaker and like whatever. And it's like, okay, maybe that'll work for you, and maybe you'll have a lot of followers on TikTok.
I'm hearing that a lot, actually. I'm hearing that a lot. I hear a lot of start a YouTube. And we have like small talks with people in airports, in offices, and you tell them what you do. The first thing they say, oh yeah, I've been telling my son to have his own YouTube channel. And I said, okay, interesting career advice now, but I mean, I follow a couple of YouTubers, some of them are fun to watch with when you want to geek out about gear. Some of them are very technical. I work with one here in the DC area that has like a nice channel too, and heavily focused on aperture. So I hire him all the time. My buddy Bart Johnson, will give him a shout out. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of work. I see them working a lot, and so it's crazy to get those advices now. Yes, get your own YouTube channel. It's like you're gonna have this empty wall as an audience. You have to build it. So yeah, that's what you said. The TikTok is a new thing. I don't understand TikTok. I might be too old for that. I don't really know what it is, but I'm been hearing that TikTok thing too. And probably next year will be, I don't know, metaverse, whatever. I know.
No. Metaverse, bro. I could go on for another hour about metaverse. All right. Second question, final question. If you were to put Dambusters in a double feature, you're programming a double feature, and Dambusters is one of the films. What's the other film?
Oh, easy one. Damnation from Patagonia. Patagonia did, Patagonia, the brand that we all know, that we all wear stuff in Patagonia, did a similar thing called the Damnation, which is about the impact of dams. So this one is kind of like an unofficial sequel in a way, And when I was in Finland interviewing these guys, and the biggest star of Finland, Jasper Pakkonen, that is actually in the two latest movies from Spike Lee, great actor in the series Vikings. He's Brad Pitt over there, or Leo DiCaprio. So he said to me, "Yeah, man, I watched Damnation and I went crazy and I wanted to know more about this stuff. I purchased the rights to show it in Finland, and we started a movement based on that movie." So that movie I have a huge respect for the film. It's very well done, beautifully done, and it's perfect pairing. It's like the wine with the meat, right? A Cabernet Sauvignon with a nice piece of Argentinian beef, right? Kind of the same thing. And that's what I will do. People will start with Damnation, and then you finish off with Dambusters, which is like the other thing. So that would be perfect double feature. I should do that actually one day.
Hell yeah, dude. Well, Francisco, thanks again for spending the time with me. That was a ton of fun, and we'll definitely have to keep chatting off the old Zoom. Yeah.
Let's get acquainted off Zoom and keep it up, because you're a nice guy, and I really enjoy chatting with you, and you have a nice pace to interview people. You make me feel really, really comfortable. So that's kudos to you, buddy.
Okay. That's the best compliment I could get. So thank you so much.
Frame and Reference is an Owlbot production. It's produced and edited by me, Kenny McMillan, and distributed by ProVideo Coalition. Our theme song is written and performed by Mark Pelly, and the F&R Mapbox logo was designed by Nate Truax of Truax Branding Company. You can read or watch the podcast you've just heard by going to provideocoalition.com or youtube.com/owlbot, respectively. And as always, thanks for listening.